Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 18. Another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week. And yes, I am in a hotel room. And yes, my laptop is sat on a suitcase on top of a waste paper basket. But hopefully the audio is okay. Bear with me. I'm in sunny North Carolina at the moment. There you go. As ever, if you do need any consultancy, any innovation workshops, business transformation, that sort of thing, do find me on LinkedIn. It's what I do. It's kind of what I'm doing here. First of all, we have Pokémon Go, and yes, Pokémon Go is still a thing, and it's causing havoc in the real world. Now, if you didn't know, Pokémon Go uses OpenStreetMaps behind it. So those maps that you see are actually an open source map that anybody can edit. There's a new worm that's just been released into Pokémon Go called Wiglet, and that only appears on beaches. Now, there's not a beach everywhere, so people are going into OpenStreetMaps and submitting changes to create beaches all over the place. And as you can see, this one that I found, clicked on it, and then you can see the revision notes. Please stop adding beaches. So lots of people are adding beaches. Jorge Leo seems to be the worst offender at the moment. 435 beaches tried to be added to it and also removed by the moderators because it is an open source mapping system. So I just thought it was really interesting how a digital platform is being attacked by people who've got a completely different need from it. They just want worms. Potentially this might be rerouting ambulances or making your delivery late or something like that, because other people might also be using the OpenStreetMap data. So there you go, watch out for beaches. If you go dressed up at the weekend going down to a beach, it might not exist. This is Kymira. This is a really interesting advance in clothing, and I actually have some here. So the t-shirt looks like a t-shirt. The socks, they're like socks. So there's nothing weird about them. There's no implanted technology as such, but what it actually uses is an infused, what they call bioceramic inside the fibers themselves. That bioceramic has been chosen very specifically because it has two properties. First of all, it absorbs heat from your body, and that might be when you're relaxing, but also when you're exercising. And then the second property is it re-radiates that or re-releases that as infrared radiation, which is known to have healing properties to the body. So that might be whilst you're sleeping, for instance, or it might be when you're actually training or recovering as well. So it does aid in sort of boosting performance, reducing fatigue, and also improving sleep. And like literally, there is science behind this. And if you say, does it improve sleep? Yes, there is a report behind that, so 17%, I think I saw. As you can see from the logos at the top, there's some pretty interesting people who have also seen the benefit of this. I think the third from the edge, the SAS, I think is the most impressive one there. Sorry, F1, obviously you are impressive as well. There you go, really interesting. What I thought was also interesting is that it comes as like a set, so you can also get, yes, you can get your performance, your cycling, but also a sleeping set, so pajamas, duvets, those sorts of things that will aid you in your sleep. So really interesting how bioceramics are essentially just invisible in the actual garment, but actually have a benefit. Very interesting. This is LimX, I guess that's how you say that, and their bipedal robot that's getting a little bit of a hammering. All of these things where you start seeing people smashing robots always makes me feel a little bit cringy, but there you go. It's all in the name of science. So this is using reinforcement learning. This bipedal robot has not been told how to stumble or how to recover, essentially, when it's on uneven ground. It is essentially just been let loose, and it's figured it out all by itself. So all of these tests you're seeing here are it just being let loose, walk up that hill, whatever it might need to be on uneven surfaces, and it's figuring that out by itself. And I won't play you the entire video because I'm probably going to move on to the next slide, but do go and have a look at the video. It's some of the things it can recover from are pretty interesting. So not only that, it's a pretty cool robot. Look at it. Yeah, this is going to come running after you at some point in the future, and you probably can't run up a hill to get out of the way. So interesting. This is ScrapeGraph. This is a Python library, and you can download it. It's essentially for free. It's on GitHub if you are so inclined and know how to use that. I haven't had time to actually install it and play with it yet, but yep, checks out. It's all there. Now, what this does is it screen scrapes or web scrapes. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's when you go to a website and you scrape the actual data from the website. So LinkedIn had a big court case about this a couple of years ago where other companies were essentially going to LinkedIn and a robot was clicking on pages and scraping the data that appeared and essentially getting free data from LinkedIn. Turns out that is legal. It's gone through a court case. It might not be legal everywhere. However, This is a library that uses a large language model. So yes, you might be using things like ChatGPT to write things, and this is using the same sort of large language model or an LLM to scrape websites. It needs two things, and it's simple as that. It needs a website and it needs a prompt, what you want to get from the website. So if you, for instance, showed it to LinkedIn and you said, who are the top people who are currently talking about AI, it will go and find that for you. Or maybe your competitor's website, what are the stats that I should know about? Who are the main characters? Whatever it is, it will give you that. The visualization you're seeing on the screen right now is really just looking at something and saying, like, what are the elements of it? You know, what are the bits of JavaScript? What are the documents? What are the images? What are the text? What are the Python libraries? That sort of thing. So if you are in potentially data scraping, this is something you probably need to look at. And likewise, I think it's also indicative of what's happening with large language models. Yes, you can make documents with it. Yes, you can make audio with it. And now you can use it specifically for scraping websites. So there you go. This is the Adidas Billboard Run, and this was one of the winners from the Ocean Outdoor competition last year, and it usually takes a little while to build them, and it's been released. This is already over, so you can't do this if you do live in Stockholm. Sorry, you can't do this. It's already happened. What you do is you go to a billboard with your mobile phone, you check into a billboard, and it gives you essentially a starting time, and it tells you to run to another billboard. You run to another billboard, you check in on that billboard with your mobile phone again, and it then stops the clock. So it's a point-to-point race or a steeplechase, whatever you want to call it, and there's a leaderboard and all that good stuff. So obviously promoting Adidas, but also promoting the innovation that you can get with billboards and what they can do these days. So many of them are connected to the internet. Many of them have lots of whiz bang in them, like cameras and motion detection, things like that. So it's pushing the industry forward. So if you haven't really engaged with out of home, as it's called, billboards, then it can do probably a lot more than you thought it could. This is Opal Sandy, and she's from the UK, in Oxfordshire. Unfortunately, or maybe, you know, it might be a superpower, born with a rare genetic condition that gave her no hearing. So it's the hairs in the cochlea, which is that sort of curly thing in your ear, weren't there, or they were damaged. So normally that means you do not hear. You can have a cochlear implant, which is the mechanical thing, and she does have that in her left ear, but had gene therapy in her right ear. And 6 months ago, that's what went on under general anaesthetic. Essentially where you get a virus and you inject the DNA that you actually want. The virus then goes into the body reacts against it, and it embeds that DNA into the body itself. And that regrew the hairs in her right ear. And she can actually hear not just loud sounds, but whispers apparently, and that's only after 6 months. Now, normally mammals do not, or humans do not grow those hairs in their ears. I have that in my right ear. I do not have any hairs in my right ear, and they're not coming back. So this is really interesting, A, for me, but also generally for anybody with acute hearing loss. So really interesting how gene therapy is starting to have a real impact for real people in the real world. Really like that one. Very good. And finally, we have in worm news, if you didn't know, nematode worms, in this case the C. elegans worm, are commonly studied in science because they have a very simple neural network. So their brains are quite simple, and actually they're so simple that it's been fully mapped. One of the few things that have been fully mapped. Now this is actually by Seth Miller. You can click on the link, you can go to GitHub, you can download the code if you really want to. This is me doing a screen record on the right hand side. That sort of worm thing that you're seeing has not been coded. That is literally the neurons simulated making the worm do its stuff. So it's not really been told how to follow that dot. I've just clicked it. I said, please find that dot. It's its food kind of sensing neurons, and also its avoidance neurons firing as it would in an actual brain of a worm. So it's not been told where to go, it's its literal brain. So those little dots at the top are its actual neurons firing. The brighter it is, the more it's firing, the less then it's not. But there you go. So this is essentially a brain working on the internet live. So you can imagine in the future when we have fully mapped the human brain, and that is just going to be the training data that any large language model or AI model would want, and it can then just simulate the brain. So there you go. Interesting. If you want to go and simulate a brain, go along and have a look at the website. Very interesting. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully the audio is okay. If it was, share it with somebody lovely, and I will see you again next week.